final report out a couple weeks ago. Sent that out just over a week ago, and just been going over it. Here tonight to do a brief recap of the project and summarize some of the findings in the final report and the recommendations, and then also some of the next steps moving forward. So just to start out, so this project took place basically over the entirety of last year, over all of 2024. Kind of started out the study. First half of the study was focused on gathering sufficient, information to survey information and groundwater level information to build a stormwater model that we could then, the engineer could then test against different storm events and test the different alternatives against the storm events and to see how it works. But we looked at over 10 different alternatives were looked at altogether, and out of those 10 proposed alternatives, there's three alternatives that were recommended with the overall goal of making Meeting Street passable again during a storm event, since that is the main issue. But just to give you a brief overview of the alternatives, alternative one involves clearing and regrading of the ditches both inside the neighborhood and outside the neighborhood along the drainage path. Alternative 2 is an additive alternative to alternative 1, which would include also permeable pavers on Meeting Street. And then alternative 3 was added after the draft report came out. We had some comments to go back and look at some other alternatives, which is when they found this alternative, which involves, it's an interesting alternative. It involves raising the level of Meeting Street by about 9 inches. So, and that ended up being the recommended alternative for the project, was to raise Meeting Street and the intersection at Professional Park Drive by about 9 inches. Ended up being the least costly alternative and involves the least amount of right-of-way or easement acquisition, since it's all within the town's right-of-way already. They also recommended a resiliency alternative, which involved upgrading the existing pump station at the pond. It didn't have any effects for flooding, for the duration or intensity of the flooding, but it would help, make that pump station operate more efficiently and able to be pumped down automatically during storm, and take it away from being manually operated, which it is now. So all the alternatives are outlined in the report, as well as their effects in the model. All the alternatives would give you, at least all the alternatives would give you a drivable condition during the 10-year storm on Meeting Street. But alternative 3 ended up being the least costly and least right-of-way intensive. Also outlined in here were some possible funding opportunities moving forward. As you know, this is far from the end of the project. This is just the beginning. And moving forward, also the next steps will include online web portal where residents can go and see interactive slider with a map and the flooding levels for the proposed alternatives. And we're happy to provide them some input on what we want to show there, and also a public information session, which we'll schedule probably looking at mid to late March for the public information session. But overall, WK Dixon was great to work with. They kept us informed along the way. They really did a lot of public outreach, and I think provided us a good starting point for solving this issue. And I'm happy to answer any of your questions or take recommendations moving forward.
Great work and great presentation, Sam. I appreciate that. We're going to start with Commissioner Cooper.
Yeah, I would definitely love to see something done there on Meeting Street. I met with many of the residents there on Meeting Street, especially those that are prone to the flood. It starts out on Professional and then slide on Meeting, and then the very first street to kind of intersect is where it kind of stops. And then it's dry from there, there and out. But those that are being flooded are really stuck in their houses. Many of those, few who are not elderly, but do have a need to maybe be able to get out of their house for medication purposes and stuff, and found themselves stuck. So if whatever we can do, I'm not least costly thing or cost, whatever the cost may be, but this need to be fixed. Obviously, the developer did not plan that site very well at all. So whatever we can do, and unfortunately, Meeting Street is not in the HOA that exists out on the other side, and they don't really seem to have a great interest in whether or not they flood or don't flood.
True. Yeah. That's the good thing about Alternative 3 is, we wouldn't have to get any HOA agreement or off-site agreement in place, because even the ditches and ponds and everything on site is all private property. So even doing the neighborhood.
I go out every time I've seen we had some seriously heavy rain. I know I need to drive out there and check on a couple of those people there to make sure that they're adequate in terms of the medication or food, and so whatever we can do. Thank you, Sam.
Sure.
Thank you. Commissioner Oliver.
So a couple questions. One question. When was the last construction of that area completed, having to do with this? What year, roughly?
That was probably way before my time here. I think the project started in the early 2000s and then continued to maybe the 2010s. Past the 2010s? Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your response. When was the last work done in that area having to do with this, roughly?
Do you know, Kyle? Okay. Sounds like right before I got here, probably 2018, 2019.
2018.
Yes.
Okay. If that's the case, is the statute run on 2018 issues?
Almost certainly.
Okay.
6 years.
Right. And if it had not run, then we could go back against responsible parties in the community. Somebody could.
Somebody, yes, sir. I think that right would.
Somebody at interest could.
Correct. I think that right would primarily lie with the impacted property owners.
Correct.
But the town might have some standing to chase that.
Okay. So you'd have to clear a standing deal, but again, the statute is run, and you don't see any way of that being violated.
It, 6 years, I mean, there are some extended statutes
some
of limitation.
extensions.
Yes, but, usually 3 is the typical statute of limitations.
Right.
But 6 would just, put it beyond what I would normally see.
Beyond the extensions.
Yes, sir.
That's my understanding. But if it weren't, somebody at interest could have gone back.
Yes, sir. And of course, you've got I don't know who the developer was, but is that developer still around? Or are they still capable of responding in damages or whatever?
And their bonding company.
And I can assure you the bonds expired.
This study, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sam, but this study was performed through the efforts of the town getting a grant to perform this study.
That is correct, yes.
Is it yours and legal's opinion that for anything effective to happen beyond this, if you would, that there's going to have to be community agreement either through an HOA or some other activity?
We certainly want to get some more community involvement moving forward. With the public information session and the web portal, both be ways we can do that. As far as a formal agreement, depends on what alternative we decide to go with. If we go entirely alternative 3, I think we would still need to get at least the individual homeowners' approvals, since even though the majority of the construction would be within the right-of-way of the street, it still would probably would affect the level of their lots, and we would want to, kind of smooth it out towards the house, and which could affect their lots as well. So we would at least want to get some private, homeowner approval there. If we went with some of the other alternatives, we would definitely need some kind of agreement with the HOA moving forward for access and future maintenance, if necessary.
I'm going to do you a favor of having you say yes, that was a yes. Because I think that's the concentration that we need to focus on, is for this to move forward, we're going to have community involvement, whether it be done through an HOA, ownership, accessibility, easements, et cetera. This is not going to be something that cannot be done without community involvement. And I think we need to concentrate on that. And when you go into the public session, that needs to be the goal. And that is that we've got to get people to do this. Now, the next question is what they're going to do. And I think on pages 29 through 30, you've talked about various funding things. And I'm very much in favor of trying. I don't think that this should necessarily be the general responsibility of all the taxpayers in this community. I think we should instead look at ways that this group, properly formed, properly motivated, properly managed, through us as sponsor, can get grant. There's several things in here you talk about, no interest loans. I don't think that's the answer. I think we have to focus on and help them help themselves, but put the pressure on to make it happen. So I would set up my suggestion to you and to us as commissioners is we focus on some very specific goals of what needs to come out of this extraordinarily valuable report that was done through grant funding at the initiation of this town. The question is focus on the exact outcomes that have to happen. And one of those, in my opinion, is community agreement, joint agreement, and then the second is the kind of target that they need to get to raise the money to fix this. Now, I will say that on page, you do point out one thing, which I think also should be a leadership thing, and that is on this pump situation. That needs to be at the very highest level, because it is relatively less cost, and at least it addresses some temporary handling of the emergency situation that they have. It at least helps to at least mediate some of that. So I'd be very focused on this and get down some specific goals and try to find some leadership to make it happen. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioner Spiegler.
Thank you, Sam, for this presentation, and I'm very happy to see that this report has been completed. I think this is, like you said, the first step in this effort, so thank you. For alternative 3 that you shared, so raising the roads, so from reading this report, and I've been to Meeting Street, so I know how much it floods when it rains there, but the report said it's sort of like it's a bowl.
Yes.
So if we were to raise the road there, is the property on either side, the homeowners, are they sort of already on top of the bowl and the road will be now at their level, or will the road be 9 inches above their property?
That's a good question. Luckily, there was enough elevation of the existing, houses, foundations to be able to do this. Otherwise, it probably wouldn't have been recommended. But in the
Because they
mod,
would have been lower than the road, is that what you're
right,
saying?
yeah.
Okay.
So it still gives the houses enough elevation above the road level to not be seriously affected.
Because
during
otherwise
the
the
storm
water
event.
would run into their properties,
Right,
essentially, right?
right.
Okay.
That was definitely a major concern. And it did, alternative 3, if you did notice in here, it does push the water a little bit further into their yard by raising the street, but not up to the house level, just a little bit more further in, if you will. But overall, it gets it off the road and into the ditches, which is what we want. So.
I mean, I'm not an engineer by any means, but to me that sounds like good news. Alternative 3, and looking at the table, I think it's on page 29. Like you said, it's $2 million. It says $2 million, right? But it's also like you said, least expensive of the 3 alternatives that are in that table.
Yeah. It's interesting to see. I mean,
Yeah.
we kind of knew it was low to begin with going into the study. I didn't tell them that, ahead of the study. I wanted them to see if they could figure it out themselves, and they sort of did. They kind of halfway did. But then once they actually ran the numbers on it, it was interesting to see how it affected the drainage and ended up being one of the least expensive options, which I guess what we were afraid of is that would be like one of the really, really expensive options and be totally infeasible. But
So seeing as you move forward, that sounds like it might be a viable option. Now getting to how we fund that,
yeah,
you're the engineer, right? You're not the person that goes out and writes the grants. So what would be the next, and I'm throwing this on you, but what might be a next step?
let's see. Looking at we could look at our existing road projects, trying to fit some of it in there. Bucky's suggestion of reaching out to the community for support, also great alternative. And then, go through the grants again, see if there's any that really stick out as being feasible for funding part of it or all of it. Still have some design work to do, so that'll be part of it, and then construction, of course.
Okay, thank you, Sam.
Thank you. Commissioner Gilligan.
Thanks, Sam. It was exciting to read this. And as I was going over the alternatives, I noticed that there wasn't one that kind of combined the different alternatives. Was that talked about? Like what the effect would be if you combined all of them together or pieces of them together?
Sure. The alternative, because before they came out with alternative 3, it was just 1 and 2, and 1 was just the ditch clearing, and 2 was sort of a halfway raising of Meeting Street. It just involved raising the center of Meeting Street while keeping the banks the same or the edges the same. But and 2 is still an add-on to alternative 1, so it doesn't work without doing 1
Yeah.
really. But and I believe alternative 3 is a standalone, but alternative 2, if you look at the cost, that's why the cost of alternative 2 is so high. Is because it involves everything with alternative 1.
Right.
So they
Okay.
did look at combining
Okay.
alternatives.
Gotcha.
And then just to be clear, the pump station alternative didn't have any effect on the flooding at all. That was just to make it easier.
Problem.
Yeah, it's just but it would make it easier to operate, and with the dual pumps, it would make it more resilient.
So do we or have you been trained on the model or know how to use the model?
I've done some modeling in the past. Haven't done it lately, but
Yeah. I just didn't know if we, got grant funds or work with the community to fund part of this, if we added some of a combination of the non-preferred alternatives in, if that would have an impact, are we able to utilize the model in the future or have WK Dixon,
oh yeah.
use the model for us in the future if we want to do a combination of things according to the grant funding and what it will fund?
Sure. There's always the option to do the non-recommended alternatives, even though they didn't have as much of an effect on the model. Since they did actually run those in the model in conjunction with other alternatives. There's 10 different alternatives. I think they ran something like 40 or 50 different iterations of it, different combinations. Because one thing we definitely wanted to look at was like adding rain gardens. One thing we had to look at was taking out the pump station altogether, just cutting a section of the pond, the top of the pond out, so when it got above a certain level, it just automatically drains out. But that kind of adversely affected some downstream locations, so we took that one out. But
Gotcha.
and alternative 3 does include some curb cuts on Professional Park that aren't there, so it kind of includes some of those different elements.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for explaining that. So it sounds like we do have access to the model in the future if we needed to rerun it according to like the requirements of a funding source or something.
Sure. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay.
I did ask him about that, and it does sound like we'll have access to it.
Yeah,
in the
that's
future.
great. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
This is exciting.
Thank you. Commissioner Lo Piccolo.
Yeah, thank you for the same. And just kind of piggybacking on what Commissioner Gillikin said, I think even having that available to see so that even when the residents of the HOA gets to take a look at this and understand this, that they can see maybe what the effects might be on the community. You know, I know if I was a homeowner there, I'd want to know, well, if we raised it, what's that going to do to my lot, and what kind of flooding is that going to create? And you know, I think having that information and even having that model for them might even be helpful. And also piggybacking on what Commissioner Gilligan said, I think maybe a hybrid might even be helpful to understand if there are certain areas that are flooding more, what else could be done in those locations. Regarding, I think we had opportunities for even permeable pavements and so forth in here as well. And I do agree with Commissioner Oliver. I think our first set of business is really getting in touch with the HOA. And getting it.
I don't think there is an HOA.
There is no HOA.
There's no HOA at all, is there?
Not on
There
Meeting
is one.
Street.
For Meeting
There,
Street.
there is one
For
on,
meeting there is,
Yes, for part
but
of
not,
it,
not everybody.
not everybody. The people who control the
couple of
pump.
People who control
are
the
under
pump
HOA.
and are out there all the time
that's not Meeting
monitoring this
And that's
thing.
not Meeting
Right.
Street.
And that's not,
no, right.
No.
Yeah.
No, they don't.
make some decisions.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
They will monitor it, probably not flood as
Well-
much on Meeting.
They do have to get out there sometimes. I know that.
Yeah, they do
Speaking
have
to
to
them,
get
they
out
do get out there and they do.
Well,
take care of it.
one interesting thing, just to address your point, Melvin, is even with the pond pumped down, Meeting Street still floods. So it's really once it gets to Meeting Street, it's not getting out of Meeting Street fast enough. And that was one of the major things I noticed when I went out there during the storm events that I relayed back to the team. And they said they were seeing the same thing in the model, which was it takes water so fast, it can't get rid of it fast enough. So even with I could see it draining down to the pond, but it was going so slow that Meeting Street was still flooded for a good day or two before it drained out completely. So and that was with the pond pumped down. So that's why the pumps don't matter as much for flooding. It's just it does provide more storage, initial storage, but even with that, it's not a guarantee that it's not going to flood. So just one thing we found out in the study that was interesting.
For the work to be done on those pumps, we do have to contact the HOA or the residents there, because that is private property, correct?
That is correct, yes.
Right. So we need to make sure that the town has that and those agreements in place so that we can work on that if we are able to get the grant funding and so forth. So
True.
I think the communication needs to be open with that group.
Yeah, one thing I thought about, to your point about the different alternatives, possibly in the web portal showing having sliders for each alternative so they could see the effects of each alternative. That could be an option. I think they're talking about going live with the web portal before the information session. That way residents have a chance to know something about it before they come down and give the study or the presentation. So I think I've got a meeting coming up with them soon about that, about the web portal. So I'll throw that out there.
And can we take a look at that information that's being presented before it is? I just want to make sure that the message is clear,
Sure.
so that this way we are not going into something and giving false information or hope or what have you. I just want to make sure the information is clear as to what we're going to be doing, like
Even
you
if
said, being open.
the pumps are replaced and the grant money is in place and we're able to do that for them, the ownership of the pumps is not the town, correct?
Not currently, no.
The
So
replacement of those pumps will still not be, will be a gift to the community.
depends on how it's funded. If the HOA wants to go ahead and pay for it, they can. I mean, there's nothing stopping them from using that information to do it themselves and keeping it totally private. Yeah, they're totally welcome to upgrade that themselves.
Yeah, we don't want to overpromise and underdeliver anything.
Right. Yeah, right.
Okay. But we do want to make clear that, we're really working at coming up with a solution. And that really started with staff. I think that it's really important to also recognize the fact that you guys chased this grant that was able to get this information in our hands. I want to thank you, past and present staff,
Thank you.
for getting this work done and getting that grant.
Sam, did you say you're going to be meeting with the residents of Meeting Street?
We will. The information session, we're going to reschedule for mid to late March. I looked at doing it at the One Harbor East. So close by location to the community up there. They've got a good space, I think, for it. What'll happen, it'll be just one night, probably weeknight, and WK Dixon will come down. They'll have some materials and some presentations. It'll be kind of like an open house event where they can come and they'll have different stations set up where residents can come and make recommendations and learn about the project. So,
Can you email the commissioners
absolutely.
a week or so before that?
Oh, yes. Yeah, of course.
Can we be in attendance?
Yes.
Just don't talk to each other.
Act like you don't know each
Act like you don't know each other.
Mayor,
Thanks,
I've got
man.
one other
Good try.
question, if I could.
Sure.
you don't need to respond now, Sam, but one time when I read this in the alternative study, in the last sentence, it says that alternative 3 involves raising, median, and a portion of professional drive, quote, to allow vehicular passage during a 10-year storm level. I would like you to at least pursue the model question with these people. When I read that, I took that as, okay, you raise the road so people can get in and out, but you haven't solved the flooding problem. I'd like you at least to be able to answer the question. My conspiracy reading of that was that let everybody in and out, but it didn't have a damn thing to do with any flood modification. So you don't have to answer now, but I'd like to have you ask that question, because somebody's going to ask you that question if it's not me.
Okay, thanks.
Will my yard continue to flood? Will I be able to get out of my driveway and get to this cleared road? I think is probably where we're heading, right?
Yeah, 11-year storm, sorry.
It is not the best option.
Yeah, one thing is everybody,
It's going to be.
everyone is seeing the front end of that on Meeting Street, but on the right side of the residents on the right side, their yards is also flooded, their backyards. So we're looking at the front end, but we also got to think about that back end because it holds water just as well.
So no canoeing
thanks.
down the streets, that kind of thing, you know. Let's see if that gets solved. All right, any further questions for Sam?
Thanks, Sam.
Great job.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Sam. Great. And look forward to that meeting. And that hasn't been ironed out, the actual meeting in March. It hasn't come up with a firm date yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
I'll work on that with staff and W.K. Dixon and the venue.
Okay. And if you can share what that language is that they're going to be sharing with that community, with the commissioners, so that we can see what goes out?
Yeah,
would be
that sounds great. Thanks.
Okay. All righty, so now we're going to move on to closed session, so I'll just need to get a motion to go into closed session pursuant to the North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11A and 6.
I make a motion that we go into closed session
Thank you.
pursuant to North Carolina General Statute.
Okay, we've got a motion on the floor. Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed have the same right. All right, let's come back here in about 3 or 4 minutes.
Going to the restroom.
I'm sorry. Are you starting to hurt?